Welcome back to Apatros Review. In this episode, the Monogram 9 Challenge, Part 1. Hi there, welcome back to Apatros Review. I'm your host, Mila Sipka, and join me as I take you on a wild ride through the world of science fiction action horror, all from my personal DVD collection. About 1,200 DVDs, plus a few Blu-rays, TV shows, video games, whatever. This is the first of a 3-episode special where I review all 9 films that Bela Lugosi made for the Poverty Row B studio Monogram during the period from 1941 to 1944. I only have 3 of these films in my personal DVD collection, while the others I caught on YouTube. To be fair, I won't be covering any DVD releases of these films due to their public domain status, and that most of these releases are of mediocre quality. Now, this first episode, I'm going to review the following films: The Invisible Ghost, directed by Joseph H. Lewis in the year 1941, which actually premiered on 25th of April 1941. Spooks Run Wild, directed by Phil Rosen in the year 1941, released 24th of October 1941. And Black Dragons, directed by William Nye in the year 1942, released on the 6th of March 1942. Now, before I get into the reviews proper, I should explain the background of these cheap B films about Bela Lugosi made. Bela Lugosi, who is actually half Hungarian, half Serbian, I'm also of Serbian descent, so I feel a little kinship with this guy, was already an established presence in Hollywood after the success of Dracula, and was constantly at work during the early 1930s with my favorite of his films, the 1932 original zombie film White Zombie, and some other films where he was paired with Boris Karloff. It was at this time that Lugosi was seriously hating the typecasting he was falling into, but he loved working in the horror genre. By the mid-1930s, Universal Studios was changing the management, and the British banned horror films at the time, and Lugosi's career was reduced to minor supporting roles in Universal's B-list features. After a brief stint in London, starring the original adaptation of the Edgar Wallace novel The Dark Eyes of London, Lugosi returned to the States, where he somehow managed to land a contract with Sam Katzman in his Monogram studio, playing the lead in a total of 9 El Cheapo mystery thrillers and comedies with the Dead End Kids, also known as the East Side Kids and the Barry Boys. But unlike the Universal features, at least these ones had Bela in full starring mode most of the time. These films have been considered by many people to be nothing other than being entertainingly awful, but some of these films did have some merit. Now for the first part of the Monogram 9 challenge. The Invisible Ghost. The first of the Monogram 9, The Invisible Ghost, has Bela Lugosi playing Charles Kessler, a kind-hearted doctor who is still grief-stricken over the fact that his wife left him for another man. But what Kessler, his daughter, her boyfriend, his former lover who works in the household as a maid, and the rest of the mansion staff do not know is that wifey is still there, having been rescued by the groundskeeper after she wound up on the losing side of an automobile accident, and where her lover wrapped himself in his car around a nearby tree, and the groundskeeper refuses to let anybody other than his own wife know that she is there. But once he goes home for the night, the brain-damaged Mrs. Kessler heads out on her own to steal food from the house, and whenever her husband catches sight of her, Kessler turns into a mindless zombie killing machine who sneaks into the room of a random servant and strangles them with his bathrobe. Mind you, that the whole zombie killing machine thing is not to be taken in the traditional sense. Kessler is only put into a self-induced trance. Probably the shock of seeing his wife stumble around gives him a homicidal hypnotic spell that only ends when he's finished killing somebody. The police decide to convict the daughter's boyfriend since the latest victim was his former lover, and he was overheard speaking to her in a rather hostile manner, and he was sent to the electric chair purely on circumstantial evidence. Flimsy circumstantial evidence. Man, 1941 was a bad time for investigative skills. But the condemned man's twin brother arrives from South America, a tad too late to save his brother, and still manages to help catch Kessler in the act. His wife arrives to steal a leg of chicken from the fridge, and Kessler goes into zombie killbot mode, but snaps right out of it when the wifey inexplicably succumbs to her brain damage and falls to the floor dead, without getting a chance to eat that leg of chicken she worked so hard to nab. And Kessler is arrested by the police, who have brought along their rather useless shrink, whose method of determining people's sanity is by sitting each person down and asking them all if they think the other is crazy. 1941 was a bad year for psychiatric integrity as well. The Invisible Ghost might be saddled with one of the most ridiculous and considerably hard to make sense of storylines in cinema history. It does have some rather well-staged cinematography and lighting, and Bela Lugosi is given a rare sympathetic role that has an interesting duality to it. Yes, he's a killer, but he doesn't know it yet. and this gives us a chance to see if this kind-hearted doctor will get a chance to figure it out for himself. The others in the cast are adequate for this kind of thing, but the one ace in the hole that this average ultra-low-budget horror cheapie has is that Clarence Muse, who previously worked with Lugosi in White Zombie, has a very good and progressive role of the butler here. Muse gives the role his typical dignity that was really quite a sight in 1941. Those who want to see a rare example of a noble role for the black person back then should seek this film out. Muse is a joy to watch, and his timing is just about perfect. I give The Invisible Ghost a C, 4 out of 10, average flick. By the way, I should point out that the title of The Invisible Ghost might be considered cheap by everybody else, but I can say that if you think about it a bit, you'll see that whoever chose the title was being really obtuse. The ghost being the wife, even though she's not dead, but she's sort of a ghost, and her presence is unknown to the rest of the household, so in a way she's practically invisible. So the title isn't quite the cheat you think it is. Now, Spooks Run Wild. This was another one of those many films made by the comedy troupe originally known as the Dead End Kids, then renamed the East Side Kids, and then finally the Barry Boys. Spooks Run Wild was the first of two films that the East Side Kids do with Bela Lugosi. An awful lot happens in this film. An awful lot of nothing, that is. After getting into a scuffle with the cops, the East Side Kids, which are basically a group of 1940s juvenile delinquents, are sent to a youth camp in the mountains to enjoy some much-needed time out. Only they reach their spot at the same time a monster killer, yeah, I didn't get it either, is out on the prowl, claiming young victims. As the East Side Kids make an escape from the camp in search of a date, a mysterious stranger driving in a car filled with coffins arrives at a nearby deserted mansion where he sets up shop with his dwarf sidekick. Who am I talking about here? Well, Bela Lugosi and his friend Angelo Rosito, the dwarf actor who was pretty legendary in the biz at the time, that is. While they enjoy their time in the mansion, the kids decide to cut through a local graveyard, but a gravedigger takes a shot at them with a double-barreled 12-gauge, causing one of them to take a minor hit. They crash out of the mansion where Lugosi makes his best efforts to make them comfortable, but the kids don't exactly trust him and decide to search the house for the monster killer. Let's be honest here, the East Side Kids, as popular as they were during the 1930s and 40s, weren't really too flash in the brightness department. These guys were pretty moronic in their level of humor. But they did make you laugh with their stupid antics, the best line being, "Where did you learn how to read in the dark?" "I went to night school." But aside from a few killer one-liners, this is pretty basically the same as the average episode of Seinfeld, in the sense that it's basically a show about nothing. The kids spend their time, and by the way, these guys are probably in their early 20s, spend their time searching the house, ranging from Lugosi essentially playing himself here, getting lost at different spots and encountering random El Cheapo kind of a haunted house effects. The end comes in an abruptness that makes you go, "What? That was it?" And the ending is choppier than a small bird getting caught in a storm. Spooks Run Wild gets a C+, 5 out of 10. It is passable comedy hijinks for the longest-running comedy acting film history, but best enjoyed if you understand the historical context of the show. Now, Black Dragons. This third entry in the Monogram 9 was rushed into production by Monogram right after the Japanese surprise attack in Pearl Harbor, and was released onto American cinemas on the 6th of March 1942. The film was Lugosi's first and only spy thriller, and by this point he was already addicted to morphine and was gripped by some very bad arthritis. Yet Lugosi never let it sap his energy. Right before the USA entered into World War II against the Nazis and Imperial Japanese, the Nazis hired the Doctor to do some work for the Black Dragon Society, a group of Japanese agents who were planning to plant some insiders into the US industrial complex so they can do some dastardly fifth column sabotage. For those who don't know, the fifth column is a term used to describe hostile agents who work to subvert the country of the nation state they're working in, or residing in other words, insider agents. 6 Japanese agents are selected for the mission to have plastic surgery done to them so they can resemble 6 American industrialists who are captured and killed so the imposters can take their place. The Doctor is then sent to a prison to avoid the plan of being discovered. But the Doctor gets a change of heart and switches places with a lookalike in order to break out and track down the spies so he can ice them off one by one. Black Dragons isn't really a good film. Indeed, it's one of the weaker films in the series, but you have to understand the context in which this was made in. It was World War II and the USA just suffered a massive attack by the Japanese in Pearl Harbor, thus forcing them into the war. Hollywood then decided to do their bit for the war effort, and just about every studio was hard at work popping out propaganda features, of which this was Monogram's entry into that market. As such, the film does its job modestly well, even though it's pretty rough to sit through. Why is it rough? Well, the technical side of things are pretty poor given that Monogram was one of the cheapest outfits around. In terms of production values, they're pretty much equal to the Asylum. Even though the Monogram never did any mockbusters. That thing didn't exist back then. Also note that the script was obviously rushed into production in an insanely quick manner, even though the film was set back a few weeks, and the events on screen don't make too much sense. I thought the idea of getting spies to be transformed into people they're meant to replace was a little intriguing, although how would you manage to change their voices convincingly? Anyway, the direction is lacking a fair bit, and Lugosi doesn't get too much of the attention, although he does his usual good work. Black Dragons gets a D+, a 3 out of 10. Pretty disappointingly poor, although as a propaganda quickie from the cheapest view around, it ain't too bad. Anyway, that's it for the end. This is the end of the first part of the Monogram 9 challenge. I will keep on reviewing the rest of the episodes in the next 2 episodes. If you want to see these films, YouTube has all 9 films, so just do a search for them. So, I hope you enjoyed that, and stay safe, and it's to be continued, with the next episode being part 2 of the Monogram 9 challenge. That's it for this review.